Um, so I'm gonna start screen sharing the slideshow. Here we go. Okay. Okay, there we go. So, welcome to our 2023 in summary Asterlit reading. We're so happy to have you all here. You guys are so talented, and we were so honored to have gotten you guys to submit to us, and we just really want to commemorate your work over this hour. So we're so glad that you could join us. And for everyone who's new to Asterlit, we're an international literary magazine that welcomes anyone and any and every teen writer to come and submit to us. So yeah, it's a really amazing space to publish your work. So we're so honored to have all these people here today. So in terms of our Asterlit 2023 statistics, just for everyone to kind of get an idea of how many people submitted to our 2 issues in 2023. So we got submissions from 73 plus countries, which we're really proud of because we're an international literary magazine and we try to get as many voices as possible to submit to us. And then we have over 1,000 submissions, 8 podcast episodes, and 1 mission, which is to empower and connect youth from around the world through creative writing. Yeah, so we're gonna get started with our first reader, who is Hannah Kim, who wrote Call Me. Hannah Kim is a Midwestern writer and editor who is desperately trying to find a job. They think too much about the social network. You can find them on Twitter at Hannah Kicks. And Hannah Kim won the theme award in our last issue, and they're absolutely brilliant. So we're so lucky to have them here today. So thank you, Hannah, for joining us. So this is an excerpt of Hannah's piece. You can find the full piece on the Asterlit website, but it just wouldn't fit in the slide. So yeah, if one of my fellow editors could like paste a link to the full piece in the chat, that would be great. But Hannah, if you'd like to get started, that would be awesome if you'd like to read your piece for us.
Hello. Um, yeah, so that's me, and I'll start reading now, I suppose. So this is a blackout poem I wrote a few years ago for Moby Dick, which interprets kind of Moby Dick as like a trans allegory, and, and it's divided into 6 parts. It's all chronological. I made it for class, so like here's like it's like pretty long, but it'll be short, I promise. So here I go. Part 1. Call me. Call me. I find myself growing in my soul, water gazers. Thousands of mortal men and water are wedded forever. Every boy with a soul in him go to sea, plunged in rivers and oceans. I confess, when I go to sea, I always go as a man. I put down performing the part I did and welcome my inmost soul. Part 2. House/body. A queer sort of place, leaning over sadly this body of mine. What a pity they didn't improve my own cold. This artist's design of my now body of a man, cut through round beams and craft cock, projecting a jaw, a man, this house I afford a boy. Part 3. Queer Quickweg. The dark complexioned harpooner and man interested me at once. The sea gods ordained he should become my shipmate, a sleeping partner, tight shoulders and a chest I have seldom loved. Private unknown stranger, I ponder over sleeping with him. Good heavens, what a face! It was the truth of falling, I concluded. I am no coward, but I confess I live as a queer man, human just as him. Part 4. Ablution. Quickwig and I blended together, not but death should part us twain. His distaff, I his bedfellow pleased. I was a creature in transition, he the best and proud, I his greatest admirer. Part 5. Guilt. Congregation of broken men. John Talbot was erect, Robert Long ground in, Ezekiel Hardy killed by sperm. What despair the same fate may be thine. My body is but the leaves of my better being, my body is not me. But the Father said, this sin, this disobedience, to obey God, we must obey ourselves. But Queequeg a man I cannibalistically take. Part Part 6, Transition. Strange is the ship, the sea, myself weaving the fates. A sound so strange. There she is, an odd sort of humorous, as I am a man. A queer and strange man. I lived after resurrection. I survived it myself. My death locked up in a vault. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So a little bit about like how this whole workshop slash event is going to work is basically after each reader, we're going to do like a little Q&A. So you guys will have time to like ask some questions to the readers, and then I'll give my own feedback or my own take on the poem and then or the piece, and then some other editors as well can jump in and then kind of give their own take or their own feedback. And so does anyone have any questions for Hannah regarding Call Me before like I say my bit?
I have a question. So this is made from Moby Dick. So what kind of was your process and thought process of like picking out which bits of the book to use and kind of like finding the right words to organize?
Yeah. Um, so this was inspired because I also have complex thoughts of gender, but it was really inspired by my professor who was constantly talking about how he was also trans man. He was like, "Oh, I really see Moby Dick as something I relate to." So when I was reading it, I was kind of thinking like I was reading the whole book through that lens, and I was trying to every time like I was like, "Oh, I kind of see what my professor's talking about." I would write that down. So most of the stuff is in the beginning and the end because the middle of Moby Dick is kind of just talking about whales. But the first part is kind of talking about his thoughts on like being different from everyone else, and his thoughts going out to sea, religion, and his relationship with the quick person. And then I kind of realized like I kind of see what my professor's talking about. So in the stuff, I don't know if you guys can see, but I like would pick out the passages and I would line them myself. Most of them, as I said, were like I think from the first 10 chapters, his relationship with Quick, then maybe the very end of the book as well. And I kind of tried to make it more throughout the book, but a lot of it's in the first few chapters because that's where he talks about himself more. So I kind of lined it myself and just kind of it was a lot. It's a long book, so it's a lot. And then the second process was kind of see how I would create the stanzas. So if you guys can see, like I like pieced it to like different parts, and then I would make the whole poem. And the reason I made it this way is also to show the physical transformation of the text, reflecting to also Ishmael's like trans journey within himself, if that makes sense. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Thanks.
Does anyone else have any questions for Hannah? Okay, so I'll jump into like some of my interpretations of this piece, which like I first of all, I just thought this was an absolutely brilliant poem. And I think it took me a few reads to kind of truly like interpret this poem and like interpret it properly. Because I think at first I was like, oh, like what is this kind of I actually forgot to read your note about the piece when I first read it. So I was like, oh, like what is this talking about? Then I went back and read the piece, read the note, and then everything just kind of clicked. And I was like, wow, that takes like a ton of effort and a ton of time on your part to really go through this book that was written in the 1800s, right, and transform it into this like absolutely beautiful exploration of trans identity. And I'm sure, yeah, again, I'm sure it took a lot of effort on your part, like taking individual lines from Moby Dick and creating this whole new like nuanced storyline. When we came up with the Lacuna theme, we were looking out for blackout poetry, and we got like a good handful of blackout poetry submissions. But I think what stood out about your poem was kind of how methodically organized it was. We were really impressed by like your 6-part division. We thought that was really neat. Also, like the way you said that you took lines chronologically from the book, which we thought like was super impressive. Um, and you created like your whole own unique interpretation of the character Ishmael, which is amazing. And actually, I've never read Moby Dick before. I'm inspired to read it after your poem. But I was still able to appreciate your process and your use of language. So a really incredible job, Hannah. Thank you so much. So our next reader is Leanne. Let's see. There we go. Yeah. So Leanne Waverly Sy. She wrote Notes from an Actress Granddaughter, which is a Starlet Award and Pushcart Prize winner. And so Leanne is a Chinese Filipino writer based in the Philippines. She's currently pursuing a degree in creative writing with a specialization in fiction. Her work has been published in Yuzu Press, Healthline Zine, Heights, Ateneo, I think, and other publications. Also, at any point, I forgot to mention this, if I'm pronouncing your written name wrong, please feel free to correct me because I don't want to like butcher anyone's pronunciation, especially since this is your time to read and share.
Uh, my surname is pronounced C.
C, got it. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
okay.
Leanne Waverly C. Okay. Thank you. Okay, um, so this is Leanne's piece. So whenever you're ready, you can feel free to read and then we'll jump into some questions.
Okay, I can start. Notes from an Acorist granddaughter. Number 1. The fish is a common household pet. Number 2. All species of fish can breathe underwater. Number 3. You like black angelfish. Number 4. The freshwater angelfish belongs to the Cichlidae family. Number 5. The shape of an angelfish resembles that of an angel, hence its name. Number 6. Angelfish can live up to 10 to 15 years in captivity if properly cared for. Number 7. To write a poem about fish, one must bring it above the surface. Number 8. The angelfish cried when it was separated from its family. Number 9. It is advisable to purchase pet fish in pairs or groups. Number 10. The easiest way to become God is to create an artificial ecosystem. Number 11. An aquarium is a man-made sanctuary free of polluted air. Number 12. Fish cannot read poetry. To do so, they must understand human thought. Nonetheless, your angelfish learned how to read in order to pass the time. Number 13. The fish is a commonly mistreated pet. Number 14. The black angelfish is a fallen angel stripped of its purity. Number 15. Gill flukes are parasitic infections which even pets are susceptible to. Number 16. Angelfish can recognize their owners. They must miss you. Number 17. During the Great Flood, the fish were rewarded for being sinless. Number 18. Pets cannot be returned to the wild, having been doomed to a life of codependence. Number 19. The angelfish had no place in the Garden of Eden. Number 20. The doctors should have replaced your lungs with gills. Number 21. Your fish could not survive without their god. That is why all but one died. Number 22. What angelfish have in common with angels is their incapacity for salvation. Number 23. The angelfish cannot fly. It remains trapped underwater, a servant to humanity. Number 24. I wonder if drowning feels like suffocating on smoke. Number 25. The black angelfish recognizes your portrait on the wall.
Wow. Yeah. So I also like this piece is so amazing. It also has so many layers, just like Hannah's piece. Like it definitely took me like multiple reads to kind of like really truly understand your message and really like make sense of what you were saying because there's so many layers in this piece that we were breaking down when we first read it. And I'm so in awe of this piece. First of all, I'll say like the pacing and organization like ties perfectly into your theme. I think I love the list format. I think I also like I was at first I think I was kind of perplexed by your use of aquatic imagery, and I wondered kind of what message you were trying to send with your symbol of the black angelfish. But I think like as the numbered list climbs higher, you begin to unlock like the human-like characteristics of these fish, right? And then the reader recognizes kind of the complex emotions the fish experiences after their owner's death, which mirror like those same feelings of grieving humans. And so I really saw like a lot of myself in the black angelfish, and I think a lot of readers also see themselves in these fish, which you wouldn't expect like someone writing about a fish to create such a amazing characterization of this animal, right? And I also, yeah, I really admire the consistency in your use of language. You have these like overarching concepts that weave through the entire poem. I like humanity as ecosystem controlling gods, like the whole like you the line about how also like the religious imagery, right? Like the Garden of Eden, how kind of the humans reaching into the tank are the god. And then also I really liked the part about angelfish learning to read poetry. I thought that was really nice, really clever. And also at the end, the last line really is what struck me. The black angelfish recognizes your portrait on the wall. It really tied everything together, and I think like that line really like struck a chord in me, and I was like, yes, this is the best. This is amazing. And I just overall like found it so fascinating. Your use of the fish in this poem was just amazing, and I really loved how you were able to demonstrate their emotional attachment to their owners. So really amazing job, like really incredible poem. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So our next reader is, unfortunately, Jamie actually couldn't be here today, but I'll read their bio and kind of give you an idea of who Jamie is before we move on. Jamie Lamb is a queer biracial tea fanatic, graduated from Knox College. She majored in English and creative writing. She tends to lean towards poetry, essays, and the wilder card of urban fantasy. Jamie is from the corn part of Illinois, despite always trying to not live in Illinois. As a person, she has a habit of laughing ridiculously hard at her own jokes, making too big a deal of someone's birthday, and wants to personally remind you to drink water. Her work can be found in Viewless Wings, Break Bread Lit, Papers Publishing, Glow, a self-care anthology, and Sandhills Literary. So Jamie Lamb is a Pushcart Prize winner nominee, and it's so unfortunate that they can't join us today, but yeah, we really admire Jamie, and you can find their piece on the Asterlit website as well. But yeah, this piece is really neat, and it talks about like uses airports as a really interesting piece of imagery regarding like coming of age and growing up. So I really admire this poem as well. So our next reader is Ari Watkins with Red-Tailed Hawks. Ari is a 16-year-old emerging author from Brooklyn, New York. They're a graduate of the Reynolds Young Writers Program at Denison University. Their poem Red-Tailed Hawks won first place in the 2023 Ned Vizzini Teen Writing Contest and was published in the Brooklyn Public Library's Teen Writing Journal. When not writing, they're ranting to their friends about the importance of love or how life is better with the windows open. So we're so lucky to have you today, Ari. And whenever you're ready, you can get going.
Hi, thank you so much. Okay. Red-tailed hawks. Oh, can you hear me? I want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Red-tailed hawks. On the road west, we slept on the roofs of stucco houses, one big white sheet like angel wings. It never dipped too low in the nighttime, not back then. It was perfect. The whole world was perfect, and we threw ourselves at it, running and screaming, and it always caught us. We were two girls and we wanted everything. We were two girls and we ran and ran like two dogs, searching for liquor stores and prayer flags and golden toilets. We met years ago. There's a bond like iron between strange little girls, like we used to be, with something sad and wrong inside us. We would stand outside in the dark, barefoot on the wet grass, staring at the house where the lights were on and everyone was alive. But then we went west, and we made fun of Nevada, and it was an age of gold and silver, and you untied all the horses so they could run on the beach, and we ran too, from the angry horse owner, and we laughed for years. I'd never seen so many hawks in my life, Natalie. We were two hawks circling the deep blue sky, and you wanted to learn to play guitar because you thought it would make you cool. Natalie, I love you still with your red lipstick and your divination. We got to the desert and it was so hot we thought we might die, dry nothing for miles. We got to the desert and you kicked the backs of my knees so I fell kneeling in the dirt. You said, pray, pray. So I did, to the horses and the little red gods, and we held each other's hands in the red dirt and we asked to be girls forever. Thank you.
Sorry. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so um I don't even know how to like express the meaning that this poem actually has to me. I go back and read this poem like so often, like literally like every other week. I had like my own friendship breakup kind of situation, which was really hard. And I kind of like go back to this to see like this poignant depiction of female friendship, which like I absolutely love. And I just adore all of your imagery. And I just think like I'm so in awe of this poem. I actually, I talk about this poem with a lot of people and I kind of use it as like, and Emma knows too, I've talked about this poem before. Yeah, I use this poem like as an example of like ways to use imagery to really conjure like the most feeling. I think, yeah, I think when I was grappling with my own loss of friendship, I kind of used this poem as a way to like vicariously like figure out kind of the feelings that I still had towards this friend and how like even though they weren't in my life anymore. Because I think like yeah, I think my favorite line in your piece is, Natalie, I love you still with your red lipstick and your divination. I just, it's so specific, but it has so much meaning and so much depth to it. And I think we all kind of have that, those specific, very like real memories of people. And yeah, yeah, your whole poem just has such specificity to it. And even though, right, like I said, like those the red lipstick and divination were like attributes specific to Natalie. I think it demonstrates at large like the small things we notice about the people we love. So this is just like an incredible poem, and I'm so lucky that you that you submitted to us because I don't know honestly like where I would be without this poem. I love this poem so much. Yeah, thank you.
That means so much to me to hear that. Thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah, I'm literally starstruck by you. You're amazing. Okay. So the next reader is also incredible. Let's see. Are they here? Hopefully they're here. Let's see. Um,
Hi.
Hi. Okay, good. I was trying to look for you. Okay, there we go. So our next reader is let me know if I'm pronouncing your name right. Is Amalu Uasu? Amalu. Okay, got it. Okay. Amalu Uasu. So he wrote Have You Ever Been So Close to a Beating Heart, which I love. Amalu is a Moroccan poet and med student. He was part of the Between the Lines program and the Olive Writers program, which brings together writers from all across Morocco. Yep, Between the Lines is amazing. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. So here is Amalu's piece, and yeah, whenever you're ready.
Last night, I wept on my father's chest for the first time since I learned to speak. Have you ever said anything beyond I will go to the market tomorrow? And do you need more coffee? And almonds are so bitter this time of year. Last night, I lost balance on my father's chest, seeing my tongue not tiptoe when it said how the past is a space we know how to sit in best, and to grow up is to be less dazzling than dreams. How long it has been since I caught a ball, how love pours from throats so full it soaks my father's face and trickles on my hair, how sorry shrieks out in the silence of the lonely. How lovely it would be to go to the market together and throw a ball back and forth tomorrow and the next, and put my ear to my father's chest again. Have you ever been so close to a beating heart? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've just realized I completely forgot to do the Q&A after every reader. So I'm going to pause for a second before we get into feedback from Amalu. And do any of you guys have any questions for like the past few readers that we have before I get into so it could be for Ari or yeah, I think let's see. Yep, for Ari or Leanne as well as well as Amalu. So does anyone have any like questions before we get into it? Okay, yeah, Selena, go ahead.
Hi, I have a quick question for Amalu about your poem. I was really curious what made you want to explore like parental relations through kind of like, sorry, like a market scene, if that makes sense, like kind of using that imagery, that theming, and kind of that setting to explore you or your character's relationship with your father.
I don't know how cultural or specifically cultural it is for Morocco, but it is a very common thing here. Like it is a very common bonding activity for fathers and sons to go to the market together, especially because we do not have supermarkets. So the whole thing is to have somebody carry your bags along because most of our markets do not have shopping carts. So that is a very big thing here, and it is sort of one of the activities that brings people together, especially fathers and sons in Morocco.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other
Thank you.
questions for the last few readers before I go into?
I had a question. I put it in the chat, but I basically wanted to know like the thought process of all the poets, this one and the last two, because I was really curious about how the imagery and how the kind of subjects were thought of, and then they were translated into poems. But we can answer it later if you wanted, like at the very end session.
Yeah, do you want to do that for the very last Q&A session? Okay, yeah, we'll do that. Sorry, I haven't been checking the chat 'cause it's kind of hard to see while presenting the slideshow, but yeah. Okay, let's see. Do we have some? Okay, I see some questions. So we'll get those answered by the end of the meeting. Don't worry. Okay, so in terms of my feedback for Amalu, who was a Pushcart Prize nominee, I think, like Selena said, I think your poem has a really raw depiction of a father-son relationship. And this specific moment of connection that you're talking about, it feels like something that the narrator has sought after for so long and just hasn't been able to obtain, and it's finally arrived, this kind of intimate connection with his father. And within his father's embrace, right, he reflects on time lost and vulnerability, kind of reduced to superficial conversation about oh, let's see, what are some of the questions? Almonds are so bitter this time of year. Do you need more coffee, right? More superficial statements that kind of show care, right? Show love, but don't really have that explicit nature. And I think once this line is crossed, I think the narrator kind of dreams of taking a trip to the market with his dad, and the following day, and wonders when this next embrace will be. I just love the specificity of your poem. I think it really offers a glimpse into the spaces that can be opened up, especially when men are present for one another, and it provides a healthy, really emotional depiction of masculinity, which I so appreciated when I read this poem. Yeah, so thank you so much for this. I really love this piece.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. So our next reader is Avery Yoder Wells. Let me know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, with Ruminantia. Avery is a trans queer writer who should be doing their homework right now. Their work can be found in Split Lit Magazine, Aurora Journal, Ice Lolly Review, and elsewhere. They lurk on Twitter at Avery Otherwise. Oh, don't know what happened there. Sorry. Well, just ignore that section of the slide. Okay, Avery, whenever you're ready. Yep.
All right, thank you. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. My grandmother only calls me to complain about deer and their incomplete bodies. Her backyard gutters with fog, so they bother her piecemeal. On Monday, she finds antlers stitched into moss and forsythia, or on Thursday, 2 tongue tails bound at the bend. She spends my birthday tallying hoof prints and occasional hooves. She cajoles me to return and collect them. I used to clean her yards of remnants, slotting femurs and calves into a bucket so they wouldn't decompose near her zucchini. She saved each piece in her basement. She was trying, I think, to build her own framework of a deer. I'd avoid the skins lolling on her coffee table, hanging from her freezer inside each of her nesting dolls. Maybe she just hoards bodies in case they answer her wishes. I can understand that. I wished once. I swirled a pile of wrist bones like a prospector and begged, and they gave me the piecemeal skeleton of all I ever wanted. Twin tails and her zucchini, eyes and her forsythia. Liminal, I wished the deer to live forever. Not for mercy, not for my grandmother's torment. only to hoard her remnants when she calls on my birthday to complain about deer. If I equivocate enough, she may build me in her basement, while I escape to the woods again, still somehow comforted that she wishes to make a grandchild out of me.
Does anyone have any questions for Avery? Okay, yes. I see a question, so you can feel free to unmute.
What's the significance of your title?
I always struggle with titles. Ruminants is the like scientific classification for the animal category that a deer inhabits. And I kind of like I wanted to sort of make it a Odyssey style, Aeneid style title in which the word ruminant becomes like something that refers to sort of a deer story almost. I don't know.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay, so I will go into my little spiel. Avery's piece was nominated for the Best of the Net anthology. And yeah, I love this piece. I think it's so methodically crafted, and you have such well incorporated images that really demonstrate like the thought you put into it. The first thing I noticed was your consistency in like a lot of the language that you use. Actually, you repeat certain words like first at the beginning of the poem, then at the end. I noticed piecemeal was kind of a word that you used multiple times. And so the first time was her backyard gutters with fog, so they bother her piecemeal, and later, and they gave me a piecemeal skeleton of all I ever wanted, which is amazing, amazing line. So I'm wondering like what's the significance of that word has in your piece and why you use that in like two different ways. Yeah, so I was wondering about that, like if you intentionally kind of included piecemeal.
Yeah, that was absolutely intentional. I think one of the best ways for me to kind of connect two different ideas in a piece is to have just a little word that repeats. I wanted to I wanted to make it clear that what the speaker had kind of wished for was this plague of piecemeal deer. And so by using the same word, I felt like I could connect that back to the images at the beginning and help the reader follow it a little bit more. And like just doing little choices like that, I feel like makes things more coherent.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I also think like I find like the image of your grandmother or the grandmother zucchini as being like very visceral. I think like you first show like the how you kind of are trying to prevent these deer parts from decomposing near her zucchini. And at the end, they infect her zucchini anyway, right? Like there's like stuff in her zucchini. And so overall, like a really beautiful depiction of how like you're trying to reconstruct these broken things. Yeah, I was curious like why you use deer, like why you use the deer imagery as kind of like your kind of the thing that weaved through your poem.
Yeah, it started with the first line because it was an actual experience that I had where my grandma called me, for my birthday, and we don't talk very often. And she spent about half the call complaining the deer kept getting into her yard and kept eating all her things, and that was all she would talk about. And every time she emails me, she gives me a deer update. She's like, the deer did this today, the deer did that today. And so like I had that kind of line in my head, and then I, went wild with it.
That's amazing. I think you made it so much like more because yeah, I understand that. When my grandma calls me, she talks about like her like she's always talking about something to do with like the people outside her house, like her neighbors like partying, or like it's like always updates on like her various neighbors and what they're doing. So it's always something going wrong in our grandmother's house and in our grandmother's neighborhood. Okay. Yeah, so thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it and I love your piece. Okay. So our next reader is Wanda Deglane with The Patron Saint of Strawberry Lemonade and Weird Earrings. Wanda is a poet and therapist from Arizona. She has written Melancholia and other books. So we're so lucky to have you, Wanda. And yeah, here's Wanda's piece. So yeah, whenever you're ready.
Okay, sorry. Thank you guys so much for having me here. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So, the patron saint of strawberry lemonade and weird earrings. I practice self-love like a fist cracking against drywall. I have no knack for self-compassion, but I buy myself earrings shaped like mushrooms, and it feels close to the same thing. I want to be as beautiful as a doe lying sweetly in a flower field, as functional as the bullet whizzing through her eye. I want to feel so strong, so sure, instead of petals in a hurricane or gas station corn dogs. I want to be so soft, so good, but I'm eggshells crumpling into cake batter. I split the sorrow from my body and feel its absence like a phantom limb. Self-love, it turns out, is just Monday morning breakfast, just clean teeth and bloody gums, but it feels like a 10-car pileup, like crawling through mirror shards. I practice good posture as if I'm someone who knows a thing or two. I practice self-forgiveness as if I'm something gentle enough to be held in mother arms. Semi-sweet, I wax more than I wane. I ripen more than I rot. I pull depression from the bags under my eyes and watch it slip glittering down the drain. I hold myself like a new lover, take all this self-love into my bone marrow. I practice believing it'll stay inside me, not seep out of my wounds. I practice hoping, 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 and it passes through my skin, candescent as sunlight, full to the brim with something I can't yet name.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions for Wanda? Okay, I see a hand. Yes, go ahead. Oh wait, that's not a hand, that's clapping. Sorry. Okay. Do I see a hand? I see no hands. So no one has any questions before we go on? Or like any comments?
Hi, if I may ask a question.
Yes.
So yeah, you mentioned in your bio that you're a therapist, right?
Yes.
So I just wanted to know, like how much of that job influences your writing, I guess. I was just curious about that.
Um, I'd say quite a bit. I feel like a lot of my writing kind of revolves around mental health. And this poem was written a few years ago before I even was a therapist. But it's still, I think the topic of mental health and healing and growth, which is, so very common in therapy and in my work, is very present throughout my work. So, yes,
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
of course.
Okay, any other questions?
I have a question and comment sort of mix up. I was wondering if this sort of the style that you write in and the imagery that you use sort of reminded me of the imagery that Richard Seiken, don't know how to pronounce his name, uses. And I was wondering if you've ever read anything by him.
Yes, I have. I love Crush very much. I think that's the only book I've read of his. I read it a long time ago, but a lot of his poems still stick with me. Like the one where it's like you are Jeff, that one's amazing. So thank you.
Yeah, I love that work, and that was a sort of compliment. This poem is so incredibly beautiful, and the imagery is amazing.
Thank you. That's very sweet of you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So Wanda's piece is a Starlet Award winner for our Paradox issue. It is also a Pushcart Prize and Best of the Night nominee. So yeah, all the things. This is a really super clever, really personal critique of the way kind of self-love is portrayed in the media. And like that's how I kind of interpret it, as this kind of purified thing. Like we're always expected to kind of do self-love in this very specific sanitized way. And in reality, it's a lot messier than that. And I think you do a really good job of juxtaposing how you feel, how you want to feel with how you really feel. Like I want to be so strong, so sure instead of petals in a hurricane or gas station corn dogs. Like gas station corn dogs is so specific. I love that. Like it's so I know exactly what you mean. I also really loved your line, I pull depression from the bags under my eyes and watch it slip glittering down the drain. I think it really like accurately depicts how we try to care for ourselves in this sanitized way. So I really appreciate your poem. And yeah, it means a lot to me. And I do go back and read this poem as well, just like Ari's. And I'm in awe of your work. And yeah, I'm really like I read this when I'm reminded that self-care doesn't look the same for everybody, right? And it's sometimes a lot less like sanitized than what we are expected to do. And it's not always like easy and it's not always a quick fix. So yeah, I really appreciate your piece. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That's so kind of you.
Of course. Okay. So our final reader is Krapo Kianita. Let me know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Okay. Yeah. So Krapuk, is it Krapuk, Yanida?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. So Krapuk is a high school student in Bangkok, Thailand. When she isn't writing, she's playing the violin, reading a riveting novel, or crocheting plushies. Krapuk is a founder and editor-in-chief of her school newspaper, The Newtonian. Her writing is featured in Gastro Press, Litro magazine, and Outlander magazine, and more. So we're so fortunate to have you here today. And here's an excerpt from Krapuk's piece, but if one of my fellow editors could also post a link to the full piece in the chat, that would be great as well. Yeah, so whenever you're ready, you can get started.
Thank you so much. Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Word of mouth around Bangkok says that a flesh-eating ghost haunts the street food market from sunset until dawn. Children used to run around the market, the sound of laughter often harmonized with the loud music wafting through the evening air until a gas tank exploded in one of the noodle shops. This is what the local children have to say. I saw a man walking through the market. He had no legs, says the cafe's owner's son. I tried to run, but he kept catching up with me. He had cuts all over his long, bony hands, says a frequenter who often drops by after school. He has warts all over his face. The ghost roams the empty streets he used to know, like the back of his hands. Ridden with knife cuts and walk burns, his presence creates a chilling breeze wafting through the hot summer air. There is no smell of barbecue propagating the evening atmosphere, no laughter echoing through the streets. The ghost peeks into the abandoned stalls and clay pots of charcoal. Flies and moths crawl over the canvas signs, letting visitors know about the long outdated deals. Steel stools and rusting tables sit neatly folded in a corner. He thinks of the times he slipped through the crowds with 3 plates of fried noodles balanced on his arms, setting them onto tables occupied by blonde-haired tourists and students with shirts untucked from the belted pants. He thinks of his wife's grin as she spoons extra servings of noodles for the bony children and stray cats who nestle in her arms each desk. At the thought of that lively energy, the ghost senses movement in the market. There's someone here, with sandals slapping on the long untouched ground. High-pitched laughter. He turns around, sending the hanging roots of the banyan trees whistling back and forth. A smile creeps onto his face. Stretched lips and long teeth protrude from his thin gums. The burn marks on his face stretch like taut stockings. At the end of the street, 3 young boys skip over a woven rubber band rope, and his smile only grows wider. The leaves rustle and the clouds darken the evening sky. The shrill harmony of laughter pierces through the low rumble of thunder and otherwise tranquil market. He hovers just slightly over the boy, agilely jumping over the rope. The boy reminds him of his son, who moved to America due to unbearable grief after his father's shop burned down. The ghost thinks of the times they spent skipping over woven rubber bands. The legless ghost misses what it used to feel like when it was tethered to the ground, to someplace, someone, and a split-second feeling of flying each time he leapt. He grabs the boy's shoulders with his translucent hands and jumps. Thank you.
Thank you. So I love this excerpt that you read. I think if you like continue reading this piece, you'll kind of unlock like a lot more like complexities as to like the ghost relationship with the family that owns the fried noodle shop. Yeah, but does anyone have any questions for Krapuk before I go in?
Oh yeah, I have a question. I remember like reading this piece during the process. I think it was Zara and I who read it first, and for me, I really this is common. I really like the like urban life, how you described like the city life there, and I thought that was very authentic. And my question is like, how did this ghost become an inspiration? Like, is this something like um out of just normal since I know you also live in Thailand?
Well, I personally have a huge fear of ghosts, and I was just trying to cope with the fact that people keep telling me ghost stories about markets and apartments and hotels in Thailand, and apparently they're very scary. And so I tried to humanize it through writing a story about a sympathetic ghost that kind of has some humanity left in him, even though he's dead for so a long time ago.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay, so I think this piece is amazing. Again, like if you read more, like there's a lot of depth and complexity to this piece. I think like the first like the thing you mentioned about like it being a sympathetic ghost, like a ghost with feeling, right? I think you write with such tenderness and all your characters feel really like real and distinct. And you depict this ghost who's been like ostracized from society with so much compassion. And the ghost actually ended up being my favorite character because I think you let us in on so many of his complexities and kind of the reasons behind his perpetual sadness. I won't reveal or spoil anything because I want people to keep reading. But I also found it fascinating how you unraveled the ghost connection with a family that owned the fried noodle shop. And yeah, so I love this piece so much, and I love like the language that you use and how I like the italicized bits in between the sections, giving kind of like context as to like what people think of the ghost versus how the ghost actually is, and kind of how these stories are kind of fabricated and don't tell the whole truth. So yeah, I so appreciate this piece, not poem. Thank you so much. And yeah,
Thank you.
I love it. Okay, so I think, yep. So that was our last reader. We're so lucky to have had all of you guys here today. I'm so in awe of all of you guys. So I'm just gonna, before we jump into our final Q&A, I'm gonna give you guys like a bit of upcoming Asterlit news. So our issue, etc., is open for submissions until February 29th. We nominate for Best Small Fictions, Pushcart, Best Microfictions, and Best of the Net, as well as our Starlet Award winners, which get $100, our honorable mention award winners, and our theme award winners, which a lot of you guys have won or multiple of these awards. So you can support us on Ko-fi or donate through our application for extra submissions or editorial feedback. So you can pay like some extra money through your application if you want to submit extra or get some feedback. You can check out our podcast at Aster on Spotify, where we interview some really cool, interesting writers like you. And yeah, you can stay tuned for some future events and workshops that we're going to be having this upcoming year. And yeah, 2023 was a really great year because of you guys. We loved all of your work. And if you have an idea for us, you can email us at asterlitmagazine@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram at aster.lit or or Twitter/X at litaster. So yeah, thank you guys so much. So thank you for being a part of our community. Our Instagram written correctly is aster.lit. Our Twitter is at litaster. So I'm gonna stop screen sharing so I can look in the chat to see if anyone's asked any questions. Okay, so I think Hannah, do you still want to do your like thing where you ask the perspective or like I forget what you said.
Um, I just asked like how people thought of their poem, like their process and like the symbols they use, but people don't have time. I know like 10 minutes. I was just curious of everyone's sort of thought process.
Yeah. Do you have like specific, I don't know, Emma, what do you think? Do you think like we'll have time to do like every
Um, yeah, if everyone just talks briefly, we can kind of maybe go in order of the reading just to like keep things organized and everyone can just like share a little bit.
Yeah, so we'll go in order of the reading. So Hannah, would you mind asking your question one more time and then we'll go into it?
So I was asking like how you guys came up with the poem and just sort of what you guys thought of the main symbols, like how you guys thought of the main symbols of your poems. So that was really interesting, like for example, like the blackfish and how it was created, or like I really like the desert and on the other poems. Like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so you can start actually answering your own question, and then we'll go forward. Yeah.
Oh, well, as I said earlier, I thought of it in a class I took, and my professor really liked Moby Dick and saw it as a trans theme, and I sort of try to view it that way too. The themes I used were like ocean mostly because the ocean is a very transitioning thing. It moves and it flows and it doesn't stay the same. So that's try to keep that as the main thing since they're always on the ocean. And, and there are a few references to the body and how he feels about the body. So seeing the ship as a body and the ship always having to be fixed, having to be worked upon and not staying the same as well, is also referencing to the body. So those were my kind of main themes. And as I said, I came upon it like kind of view it as a gender allegory, and seeing the their journey to the ship while it is talking about America's relationship to the ocean, also relationship to the body as well.
Thank you. So our next, I think Leanne is up next if you'd like to answer the question.
Okay, so in my case, this is a poem which is heavily influenced by grief. So to give a brief backstory, when I was 14, I lost my grandfather to lung cancer. And yeah, that was the first time I had a major loss in my life. And what really hit me was that when I lost my grandfather, I also had to say goodbye to other things I associated with him. One being his pet fish, because he used to own a small aquarium and a fish pond, but now they've dried out. My grandmother does keep some of the aquarium, and that's where I had the black angel fish. And it's interesting because the that aquarium is located in our living room, and it's actually facing the wall where we put my grandfather's portrait. As for the poem itself, I wrote this during one of my poetry workshops in college. And during that time, I was experimenting with poems, especially the medium, which is where I wanted to write a poem with featuring a list format. And I also to incorporate, I guess, some other things that were in my head that time. So like animals. And actually, when Zara mentioned Christianity, like the biblical references. Yeah, because I grew up in a Protestant school, and I remember one of my biggest let's see, I think one thing which really stuck with me in that school was when they mentioned something about how angels, they weren't capable of salvation in the same way as humans. Yeah, I don't know. It was just interesting because I've written about my grief before, and like if I compare this poem to my previous poems, yeah, it's also, I how do I say this? Um, like I can see how I've come a long way from processing my grief. And yeah.
Thank you. That was really beautiful. So our next person that's answering the question is Ari.
Yeah, this is kind of a funny answer because it's not the answer I usually give to this isn't the way that I wrote Red-tailed Hawks is not really the way that I write most of my poetry. But for me, writing poetry takes a while. I feel like it's a very sort of meditative practice to kind of wait until the poem sort of is ready to be written, I guess. That sounds kind of like woo and crazy, but it's just sort of how I do it. And I was just seeing all of this imagery of like birds and deserts, and I was thinking a lot about like friendship and love, and like especially queer female friendships. And I just sort of sat down after it was sort of percolating for me for a few days, and I just wrote the whole thing, which never happens to me really, but when it does, it's very exciting and very convenient.
That's awesome. Our next person is Amalu. There you go.
So for me, I guess I've always been I think a lot about parenthood. Even with the media I consume, I love the movie After Sun. If any of you have seen it, I think about the mother in Little Women a lot. watching the Barbie movie this summer, America Ferrera's character as the mother was the one that really for me was the heart and soul of it. And these are things that I come back to, like parenthood and going from that phase of seeing your parents as complete idols because they are the adults in your life, and growing out of it and growing to see their faults and how you forgive them that and what you forgive them and how to do it are things that I constantly go back to. And so the poem was just these thoughts and feelings and media that I consume and pieces of art that I go back to very specific cases of what parenthood looks like for me and around me in my country and in my culture.
Yeah, okay. Then our next person is Avery. Avery is still with us. There you go.
Yeah. This is a bit of an older poem, actually. It's a couple years old by this point. It's one of the few poems that I can look back on from a couple years past and be like, yeah, I still like that. I was going back into my Google Doc to see, because this was a really tough process for me, this one. I tried out a lot of ideas, I threw them out. You know, it was definitely based on my own experience, and like my grandma's house is in Virginia in the US, which is so much deer there. And, you know, I would just hang out in her backyard and, you know, mess around. And we're not that close anymore. We don't really talk to that side of the family. So it was a lot about just complicated feelings of, you know, whether or not we still have that connection. And so it was really cathartic to write about that. And I think I had a lot of fun with everything. A lot of the poems I still write today, I always try to take something simple and do something really surreal with it, you know, go fantastical, have this like strange narrative that sort of evokes the feelings that I'm having instead of saying them outright. That's like a fun exercise for me.
Yeah, for sure. Next up, Wanda.
Yeah, sorry. So, with my poem, I think I had just come out of like I wrote it a few years ago, but I think I had just come out of like a pretty heavy like depressive episode, and I was like starting to feel better. And as I was, you know, in the process of like healing a lot of things, I kind of realized like, man, this feels brutal. Like, the process of healing is actually it's hard work. It's not just something that I think in the movies is kind of depicted that like you just kind of like feel better all of a sudden and everything is awesome. It's like, you know, you really have to work at it and like really stay on top of yourself. And it's not just something that comes effortlessly. I think kind of similar to Ari, I like usually take quite a while to write my poems, you know, days, weeks, months, sometimes even years. But this one was written like feverishly in one night where I was just like, I just got to get these feelings out. And I remember like texting one of my poet friends at the time, was like, is this like crazy? Like, what do you think of this? And he was like, no, I love it. And it's honestly one of my favorite poems I've ever written. And yeah, I think with in terms of like the imagery in the poem, I think Leanne made a comment that like it's a lot of like gritty versus like beautiful imagery juxtaposed together. And I think that's really what I was going for, to kind of capture like that, yes, there's like a lot of beauty and like happiness and joy and healing, but it's also like very difficult and can be pretty gritty and ugly at some points, and that's not really talked about very much. So yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you. Okay. Then we have Crop Hook with a Bangkok.
Okay.
Yeah.
The story was written while I was living alone abroad in France, and it really helped me think about homesickness and stuff that I missed about Bangkok that wasn't available there in Europe. And one special thing that I always miss was the street food. And the special thing about street food is that the vendors, they come and go at the same time, and they're the same faces every day right in front of my house. And I've always talked to them every day, but I never really got to know them or learn about their lives. And so this was kind of like an inspiration on how I thought about and imagined this story about this street food vendor and just cope with my homesickness while living abroad.
Definitely. Okay, did we get through everybody? I think. Yeah. Okay. Okay, good. So does anyone have any other questions before we wrap up?
Not a question, but just like an overall comment. Like, it's absolutely just so fascinating for me to hear all of your perspectives and listen to you guys read your poems. Like, you guys are so good at reading and expressing, like, even what you wrote. And I don't know, I just think I just really love getting little glimpses of everyone's thought processes and ways like their culture and their background kind of merges with the way they like express and make sense of the world. And like it's just like this entire hour has just been so like inspirational to me on so many levels. And I'm super grateful that everyone's here. And I'm super grateful to have heard everything you guys have had to say. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and like Emma said, we as editors are just constantly inspired by you guys all the time. You guys are like an inspiration machine. Like we'll be reading your work and we'll be like, wow, like this is incredible. Like I feel so inspired to keep writing. And you guys like we're just so in awe that you guys are all here. And yeah, hearing you guys read your work was like so enlightening and like amazing. And yeah, again, you guys are all incredible readers as well as writers. And yeah, we're so beyond grateful that you guys were able to do this. So I think we're gonna wrap up now if no one has any other questions, but it was so nice to have you all here. So I'm gonna stop a recording.